welcome back to the Whole Topic Podcast. This is episode 13, the beginning of season 2.
Woo.
So if you stuck with us through all this, I know like we've been flopping like fish on some of these episodes, but you know what? We're here and we're having these.
You are our people. If you listen to all of season and you're back for season 2, you're in our tribe.
BFFs. So today, we always have these really good discussions right before we hit record.
We do.
Like every single
We need to
time.
just hit record from the get-go.
Yes, and just stop messing around with it because so today we're going to talk about homeschooling the little years. I have had a few moms reach out to me that started like homeschooling 4 or 5 year olds preschool. They're trying to do preschool and then even kindergarten. And there are curriculums out there. I'll never mentioned because
we won't say names of it because we're not mean people.
I'm kind of mean. So
I'm not mean. I'm a people pleaser. If you listen to episode 12, you know that. I feel like me.
So we're not going to name it, but this curriculum for a first grader literally took the person 6 to 8 hours a day.
Gosh.
Okay, we're all free homeschool moms. Can you imagine sitting with your kindergartner, your preschooler? Like, not only are you going to go insane, your poor child is going to go insane, and you deserve it, unfortunately, if you're going to put your kid through that. Not that it's your fault if you're just trying to figure your feet out. However, I mean, I'm a grown woman, and I can't even sit in a chair. I mean,
for that long.
That's insane. And then trying to like force bookwork down them. So today we're going to bust some of the myths of preschool and kindergarten, first grade. And we're going to talk about gentle ways of educating your children. And I know some moms are like, oh, don't educate your kids at this age or blah, blah, blah. Oh, hi, puppy dog.
Those that are not watching YouTube, Ariel's dog just jumped on. Jumped on for the call.
So I've heard some moms say like, don't start educating your kids until 7 or 8 or whatever. I think it really is a choice you as a homeschool parent have to make for your own family, because for me, I work better training my kid to start reading from 4 years old up until, and then I really can give them more work when they're 7. But at this point, I do about 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes max. I make sure the child is extremely excited about it. And I've been teaching this grade over and over again for the last 11 years. I think I've taught something at least every year. I've at least taught
somebody in kindergarten, preschool.
Yes. And so that being said, it could be done in less time. So I'm going to start by asking you guys a couple of questions because I have a lot of input on this. However, I want to ask, how much time do each of you have you put in with your child? What age did you start them? What were some things that you learned, whether they were good, things you learned that you needed to throw out when you were homeschooling your littles? Because I know you're not homeschooling that little anymore, and you're not either, but give us some of your pointers from your experience.
Me first?
Go.
So I started typically around 4 years old, and it's really honestly, if they weren't interested at 4 years old, we didn't do it. We just played a lot, but my middle and my third were interested at 4 years old. They wanted to do school because it was such a big part of our day. They felt really like it was a cool thing to be doing school. But I only did it 3 times a week, maybe. And it was very short, 20 minutes at the most. I did a really short, concise little lesson, letters, numbers, kind of all mixed in together, using the good and the beautiful pre-K or not pre-kinder. What do they call it? I can't remember what it's called, but it's their before kindergarten, before their level K. Those two, and it has letters, numbers, shapes, colors. Yes. All of those things are all mixed into one little, very short lessons. And I think there's like 50 in the book. And so I do it like twice a week. If they wanted to do it more, we would. If they didn't, they didn't. I'm big on, and it's funny because my third has wanted to do school since she was 3. She was like, because that's all she's ever known. And she would beg, and she wanted all of it. She wanted math. She wanted everything. And I would do school with her every day because she wanted it so bad. And it was amazing. By the time we actually did kindergarten and had a kindergarten curriculum, she like taught herself to write her name. She knew all of her letters, all of like so many things that you're supposed to learn in kindergarten. She already knew, and she taught it to herself. Like, I really didn't do much. And I think it's just being in the environment. And it's amazing how much they learn when it's not forced upon them.
Yep.
And it makes it fun. They get excited about it. So I typically start at 4, but honestly, if your child does have zero interest at 4 years old, teach them through play. Do something different. You do not need to get a curriculum and sit down and do 20 minutes a day unless your child is truly like excited about it and wants to do it. You probably do more damage forcing it than you will if you just let them come to it within a couple years or a year. They from 4 to 5, you'd be amazed. They may jump significantly. At 4 years old, they have zero interest. At 5 years old, they want to learn how to read. You know, you just don't know.
And before we go to Ariel, I'm just going to say this on that note. A big question: when should I start homeschooling my child? The first thing I recommend doing is checking your homeschool laws. You can do that through hslda.org. They're very good and very thorough with their homeschool laws for each state. And then, like for my state, I think it's 7 is when you have to start. However, for my home and how I work, how our schedule works, how my daughter's mind works, it's 4. And consistency totally blows away any amount of book work that you can force down someone's, like a little child's throat. They need play. They need imagination. That's why she's carefree. I got a message the other day on my Instagram. I posted in my stories a video of Zoe just walking in and seeing the cows and stuff like that. And I was following her. And someone messaged me, they're like, she's always so carefree and so happy. She just is, and she genuinely is that kind of person. And it's because 1, she has a very good, loving environment, but 2, I don't force a ton on her. She is just a little girl who's just allowed to figure life out these days. And she knows it. And she's a very well-behaved little girl, but she just knows that there's no pressure to be a certain way or reach a certain academic level at this point. So if that's your goal, I would highly recommend just making sure that it's best for your child, not something you're just trying to do to get a status as your kid's really, really good at reading or doing all this, the school stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because there's a whole group of parents that want to, because the formative years are so moldable. The brain has such a capacity to learn at that young age. You can teach them multiple languages, you can teach them mathematics beyond certain years, but you don't need to do it that young. You don't need to put all that responsibility on your child when they're so young. Instead of hammering facts into your child that is likely that they won't retain, again, unless it's a language that you practice often and whatnot. Instead of doing that, cultivating the love of learning. And I know we've talked about that. All 3 of us want to cultivate that within our families, within our children. So when I was, it's been a little while, when I was doing the little years, I have a different setup than you 2 do. So my kids are 7 years apart. So when I was going through the little years with my second, I had an older, so it was kind of easy to just not be distracted. She was more independent based, and I could say, okay, you do your schoolwork and I'm going to work with him. And again, it wasn't long if it was book work, but so it started like leapfrog. 2 years old. He's watching the leapfrog video like 7 times a day, learning his alphabet. He loves the songs. We'd have the little magnets on the refrigerator and he'd put them in and it would say the sound, and that was all great. And everything else all the way up until 5 probably was all tactile things. So there's a woman that I really love. There were multiple women that I found at that time of life that were just so inspirational to how I formed my homeschool. And one of them was Jody Mockabee. And we'll put all of the links down in the description for them. She's a homeschooling mom. She's really big on painting with her children, and all throughout their years, even high school, painting with them. So I thought, that's a really good idea. I'll paint. And my 2-year-old, my 1-year-old was able to paint appropriately with a paintbrush. And I think that's so important for children before they start to write, is to learn how to hold a paintbrush and very gently do that, because it's the pincer grab, it's your fine motor skills, it's gentleness with the paper and what you're holding, but it's creating something. They get so into it so much more than they would with a crayon or a marker or pastels or whatever. Try all the art mediums, like go crazy with the crafts. But she brought painting into my life at that time. So I was like, okay, we're going to paint a lot. And then after that, it all really just came naturally. But one of the things that really set it apart for me was I read a book by Sally Clarkson. I don't know if you girls know.
I've heard of her.
Sally.
Yep.
Yeah, I have heard of her.
I love
She's-
her stuff.
Yeah, she's awesome. But she wrote a book, Life-Giving Table, and that was the first and only book of hers that I've read. And it's about how to create a nourishing environment while you're feasting or gathered around your table, and how important it is to form relationship with your family. But I thought to myself, and while I was looking at Jody Mockabee at the same time, Jody would go on hikes with her children, and they would find and they would collect little outdoor things that they found along the way, and then they would display it in their home on a vanity that she called I think it's the vanity of curiosities or something. She had a fun name for it. And the kids would always poke at it and look at it. And it was just setting a table for asking questions about these things. So while I was reading those 2 books, my son was about 4, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just set the atmosphere. So before they would wake up in the morning, I would set up the table with picture books, with little crafts things, I would just lay the table for them, a feast of learning. They'd come downstairs, they'd see this stuff, they'd get all into it. I wasn't telling them what to do with it. They just figured it out by themselves, what they wanted to do with it. And that's how they gained their own love of learning, was just me setting the feast out before them. Like, look at all that you can explore. And even though he's not reading yet, he was still opening the picture books and looking at the pictures. But it's so interesting how little actual bookwork you have to do in the young years. For anything. You really don't need to do too much. If you want them to learn how to write, again, pincer grab, but I don't think you need to really put more than 15-20 minutes. And you're right, Andrea, consistency is key. And so is your attitude. Like, you're having an off day, maybe you need to
Take the day off.
Yeah.
Take a break. Don't ruin schooling for them just because you've got a bad attitude that day.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Ariel, because a lot of that is, if ever I'm like having a little bit more of, and this is the beauty of homeschooling a 4th grader, like a 4-year-old, I'm sorry. This is the beauty of homeschooling a 4-year-old, is that, so like so she's almost at a 1st grade level reading. Like, she's just like getting to that point. But the beauty of homeschooling a 4-year-old is that if I have a day, like today was really busy, we've done school even more so that like she's already halfway through her kindergarten and 1st grade, like already, and I'm having her do like some 1st grade with a lot of writing in it and some kindergarten. So she's doing well.
Yeah.
So that being said, I can take a day off anytime I want. Like, if I feel like I'm going to be too stressed sitting with her and trying to like
teach her. Yeah.
Yep. And she doesn't care. She's like, oh, whatever. But I mean, sometimes she will hold my feet more times than not. She will hold my feet to the fire and be like, Mom, you have to do school with me. And another tip I have with this is, okay, so let's go back to the attitude. Make sure your attitude is right. And you make sure you are ready. I don't care if you dance or scream, whatever. You make sure you're ready to celebrate when they do something that you've tried so hard to get them to learn. You be that, like, oh my gosh,
be their hype girl.
Yes, totally, because it makes him like, oh my gosh, I can do this. I'm going to do more. But then that,
and even when your older ones give you the side eye when you do it because they eternally love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, because our situations are so different, I've never experienced multiple children, homeschooling them at the same age at the same time. I mean, I've done it here and there as I've like picked up my kids, my friends' kids, or like I've taught classes and stuff, but that's not the same as doing it every single day. And you guys have done it every single day when the kids are close together in age. How do you handle that? Because I get so many people asking me all the time, how am I supposed to juggle pre-K, K1, 5, high school at the same time? Do you have any insights, any tips or?
So in our house, we do school 4 days a week, so that helps with burnout. So I was in the very beginning, the very first year, I would try and school 5 days a week because that's what schools do. They go to school 5 days a week. And then I was trying to do my house stuff and my life stuff over the weekends, and then you just start all over again, and I was going nuts. And so I realized really quickly that 4 days a week is all we need. And so we school 4 days a week, and and I've never once had a problem completing our books and still getting a summer break. So if that's a concern of yours, we typically start in the middle of August, and we're done by the middle of April, end of April, with taking week breaks throughout the year. So I usually take a week off for Thanksgiving, a couple in December, one in usually Marchish. And we've never had a problem still schooling only 4 days a week. So that really helps with the burnout, feeling like you never have any time. I take Friday and get my life back in order, my house back in order, so I can enjoy the weekend before we start again. The other thing I do, and I've done from the beginning, is I always start with the littlest first. Now that may not work, and I don't know if that's what you do, but I always tend to start with the littlest first. And my main reason for that is because littles lose their focus really quickly. So if you have yourself a schedule where you're like, okay, this is what we do. We wake up, we get dressed, we make our bed, we do our chores, have breakfast, and then it's school time. Well, if you don't start with that 4, 5, 6-year-old and they go off and play because they're not independent yet, they can't do their school on their own yet, and they go off and play, it's really, really hard to rein them back in to do school, in my opinion. And in our house, that's been the case. So I always start with them first. So we do our steps, we get to breakfast, it's school time. If you are older and you can do stuff independently, you grab your books and you go start your schoolwork and you do what you can do. And my kids know that whatever they can't do and they need my help, they just skip it until it's their turn. And then I start with the littles. If it's 20 minutes and then they're on their way, then they can go play, and you don't have to pull them back in again and try and stop them from doing something. You reduce the chances of meltdowns. And so I just kind of go in that order. I'm actually going against what I think I'm going to do this year. Of all the years that I've done, my middle child really struggles in school. She really just doesn't like the book work. She never has. She's my reader. She loves to read, but she does not see value in the book work. But she wants to do well. But she needs my encouragement of sitting there. So I've always fought it and said, I do the littles first. So she's the quickest, and then I'll go to you, and then I go to Kindle. Just skip what you don't know. And in her brain, we're very much alike. She can't skip. She can't skip things. It has to go in chronological order. And I finally this summer had that aha moment. She cannot do that. And it has caused so much strife with us because she will come to me and be like, Mom, can you just help me with this one thing? And I'm like, skip it. Go to the things you can do and I'll help you. But can you just please help me with this one thing? Just right here, because it's the next thing in line. She has to go, and she's very organized and very detailed like that. And so I had this aha moment this summer, like, why am I causing that to be a fight? My middle, or my youngest doesn't care. Emily doesn't care if she's first, second, third. She don't care. And she loves. So why am I doing this? So I think this year I'm going to start with my middle and just let her get her schoolwork done and go on about her day, get it done when she's fresh, go in the order she needs to go in, and let her move on with her day. Because I think that's some of the fights that we've had. And she's in 4th grade now.
And Emily is now old enough that
where she can do some things by herself. Where
and see, that's the power of knowing your child and knowing the type of learner learner that they are, which is what we talked about in a previous episode. You need to learn how your child learns.
And work with them, because I don't know about you guys, and I'm almost certain I can talk for you, is that we all homeschool. One of our main reasons is so that our kids love to learn, so
Yes.
that they get a different education
Yes.
than what they
Yes.
would get if they went to school. That's our goal.
And
That's
that
our
they'll get the
purpose.
attention they need.
And they get the attention they need. And so
Yeah.
if we're not being in tune to that, it only took me, I don't know, 5-6 years. But I learned. She's not out of school yet.
Yeah.
We're gonna make a change,
Yep.
guys. But if
Yeah.
we're not making those changes, then we're really not doing any beneficial by I mean, we are, but you know what I mean? Like, her
I do.
education should be something that she enjoys. And that's why I
Yes.
don't have them home. I want them to enjoy this, because if you love to learn, you can do anything in life, because you'll learn
Right.
all through adulthood. If you love
Mhm.
to learn, you'll pick
Right.
up a book to learn how to do that skill that you've been wanting to learn. But if you have this
Exactly.
mindset of hating it and that it's so
Mhm.
daunting, then you're not going to do that. Even if it's something you
Mhm.
want to learn how to do, you're not going to do it, because
Mhm.
it's school. It's
And-
learning.
And don't get discouraged if your children do go through a phase of, I don't like school, I don't want to learn. Even if you do all the things, you're chipper, you're celebrating their wins, you're laying the feast for them, you're even letting them take off school because they don't feel like doing it that day and they still gripe. You know what? They may be going through a phase.
Yeah.
Work with them through the phase. Sometimes you do need to push a little, but you don't need to make it be the end all be all. Each one of my kids has gone through, and it's been tiny, but like months worth of, oh, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do school, and tears because we're writing.
Mhm.
He would rather do math. Why can't I just do extra math so that I don't have to write? It's okay. I had to step back, take a different approach, take a break.
Yeah.
But he grew out of it. And children do that, but you can't just quit. And that's what I see too often is new moms will come into homeschooling. They'll be all gung-ho. They'll do it the way the public school system has been doing school, or the private school system even has been doing school. And or they'll try whatever they see online. Maybe they try to throw it together. It doesn't matter how they do it, but they try. And then it doesn't work out. And then they're like, you're going back to school. I can't handle you anymore. God knows you can't stay with me at home. I can't educate my kids. Like, they say all these things. And it's like, how long did you try? They're like, oh, I tried for a full year. Well, that's not very long.
No. Oh, and just FYI, the first year is the absolute hardest year.
Yeah.
Especially if you have sent them to school and then pull them home.
Yeah.
It is the hardest year, your first year, because you start out very gung-ho, you're ready to rock and you want to do this.
Yeah.
And then it's not all rainbows and sunshines, and you're wondering, wait a minute, why is this not rainbows and sunshines like I thought it was going to be in all those Instagram accounts that make it look like it is? And then you decide, nope, not for me, sending them back. The first year is the hardest. You need to find your routine. You need to find how it's going to fit for your family. You need to get out of the public school mindset.
Yes.
The worst thing you can do is try and make your homeschool look like public school.
You're gonna
It's
find
not
your
gonna work.
rhythm. You're gonna
Yes,
find it
but
in
it
what
takes
you do.
time.
Yes.
Mhm.
And just you're not teaching a college degree, people. You're just
Mhm.
teaching kids how to read and write and learn English and that kind of stuff. I think with my kids, there's certain subjects that I want full control over, and that is to make sure they're a good reader and to make sure they know how to write well. Like, as far as their letters are concerned, I want them to be able to have really good handwriting. But after that, I think the way that I get, like with multiple kids, I'm homeschooling a kindergarten, first grader kind of kid. I'm just going to say kindergarten. A second grader, a fourth and a fifth grader, and then 2 10th graders this year. And honestly, I feel like the older they get, the smoother it gets. I know that sounds really weird, but
well, they're a lot more independent.
they are. And if you can get the foundation of reading down, like, I promise you, and you don't have to read them to tears, but I do commit 20 minutes a day to reading. So one of the ways I don't get overwhelmed is I have my older kids who are very efficient in their schoolwork at this point. I know not everybody has that, but for some reason, that's how it works. And it could be just like there's an expectation I have that we are going to complete school in this amount of time. And that's an expectation, because if you don't, then you are now taking things away from the family that we need to be doing someplace else. And so everybody just kind of has that in their head that mom expects this done, and it just gets done. So that helps. But also I have the older kids will so each of my kids have to read for 20 minutes a day. Each of my little kids have to read, the ones that still struggle a little bit. And so instead of me sitting down with each one and listening to them read their stories, I have kids that love to read. So they sit down there and they listen to their sibling read and correct words as they go, instead of me having to do all of it. And I guess it's really going to depend on your child. Like, have they been raised to help that way? Mine have. So like, I do that because they've been raised to do it that way. However, it might be different if they are just coming out of public school, and it's like, you might need to just juggle it a little bit more yourself, but not necessarily kill yourself either doing it. I guess if I had an older kid that I knew could listen to someone else read, I would just say, hey, that's what we're going to do for now. That's going to be part of your school. You're going to tutor your younger sibling, and we're going to put that on your resume. You tutored him.
This is where you can enlist your family too. You can enlist your husband. You can enlist their grandmother, their grandfather, their aunt, uncle, their cool friend, neighbor, anybody.
Yep. Just getting the help, but also the lessons. You retain 80% of what you teach. So something I like to do now, I do not believe in making my kids teach my kids without me being directly overseeing, going back and making sure the work's done. I've seen that happen, and I feel like it's like tuning a piano and then tuning the piano to this piano, and eventually you're going to end up out of tune. So I don't believe in making my kids do that. However, I am okay with them taking a kid that's several grades younger than them and going through a lesson that they've already done themselves a few years ago and helping that child walk through that lesson. Because not only are they learning how to relay the information to their sibling, they're also getting 80% of that put back into their own little brain. So it benefits all around. And like I said, I always go back and oversee it and make sure that everything's done right. I actually will make sure my kids, and if they come up to any concept that they're having a hard time relaying to their sibling, I will take over 100% on that topic. And I'll make sure that child knows it. So I allow my older kids to help out with it, because sometimes my kids are kind of overachievers a little bit. They try to get all their school done at night so they don't have to do it the next day, which some ways makes sense and doesn't, but either way. But but it helps because the younger siblings are like, well, if you're going to do it, then I really would like it if you helped me do it. Well, I have a cutoff time. My cutoff time is 7:30. I'm done. So if the older sibling is feeling kind-hearted enough, which more times than not they are, because the little sibling's going to pester them until they do.
Until they do feel nice.
They'll help them. And so that's kind of how I deal with multiples. But I do agree with Stephanie, starting with the youngest. I've done that. And I focus on reading. Even math, I will count with them sometimes, but focus on reading. If you can get reading down in a fun, exciting way, that is literally the foundation for every single other subject you are going to teach your child.
You've been listening to the Whole Topic podcast. To hear more, to see behind the scenes, or to get a hold of us directly, visit our socials, Facebook and Instagram, The Whole Topic Podcast. If you'd like to hear more from Andrea, visit her blog at dearmark23.com, where she talks about whole foods, whole grains, and whole living. If you'd like to hear more from Stephanie, visit theranchershomestead.com, where she talks about simple living, gluten-free recipes, and farm life. If you'd like to see more from me, visit wildandforestcare.com, where I talk about simple living, wild recipes, and natural remedies. Thank you for listening, and God bless.